Welcome to 0 to 60. We're back for another season of driving excitement. On the line, a brand new Lexus for a year. We've got 2 returning champions and a new draft class of talent getting in the game for the first time. Both teams will be getting expert coaching advice from a pro. Team Sally will be coached by IMSA legend Scott Pruitt. Team Jetta is coached by Jack Hawksworth. This is the amazing RCF Track Edition.
Well, Tigger, let's break it down.
Okay.
First thing you see up here, massive brakes. These are new, carbon ceramic. They're all wrapped around BBS wheel, carbon fiber roof. You're talking 176 pounds lighter total.
Let me break down the rules. We've got 3 driving challenges, a corkscrew, a slalom, and a team relay. Our expert driver, Scott Pruitt, is going to break down all the specific challenges, and he and Jack will teach you all the skills you need to win.
Whoa, we got out. Are we still in?
We're right there.
Just bring it back 1 notch. Your first run was better than your second one.
Each challenge will be behind the wheel of a different car from the Lexus Performance line. The RCF Track Edition, the lighter, faster, and more powerful 2020 model of the RCF, the LC500, power-packed, luxury, and the GSF, a performance sports sedan that is a beast on the track. We've got the teams, we've got the rides on 0 to 60. Yeah!
Say hello to the champion.
That's it. So that's a good intro to the excitement that we create on the track. We've done 3 seasons so far on the precipice of planning for a 4th. So what Danielle and I want to do is kind of just take you through the presentation that really sort of get you to like, how do we get to 0 to 60? We've been doing black focused advertising on behalf of Lexus with Danielle and her team for, again, like I said, for over 12 years. But it gets to a point where it culminates into you want to do something big, something culturally specific. And a lot of the things we did here were very much sort of insights and sort of business driven. So I'll let the team at Media Post queue up the presentation, and I'll take the controls. So did you guys have the there we go. Sorry, it's a little late. All right, so I'm going to take over.
Are you able to take over right now, Howard?
It tells me I can't while someone is a participant is sharing it, but if you want, I can sort of narrate through it. You let me know when it works.
Hang on. I'm going to restart it a little differently, and we'll work it from there. One moment. All right, if you can't, just tell me to advance and I'll click in advance for you.
Hold on here, just a second. Same thing. So I can't, but I'll let you narrate.
Let me know. I'll click.
Okay, absolutely. So when we think about how do we get to 0 to 60, it's a digital racing series, and it really kind of started with the exploration when Lexus rolled out its F moniker for performance. Similar to what you may see, other automotive brands, particularly on the German side. But the question we sort of asked ourselves was, well, what does performance mean to the Black consumer, and how will that figure into the decision-making model? So when you think about where we started and how we got to here, when Lexus debuts any new model variant, they have what they were calling Lexus College, or where all the dealers get to test drive and get product education on a racetrack. We actually sent our now host, Big Tigger, out to the track with one of our long-standing partners, Automotive Rhythms, and actually filmed Big Tigger getting an experience in the RCF, and he was very much blown away. So from there, it's like, okay, well, Lexus has these performance driving schools. So what if we did something that was a combination of both? Getting enthusiasts on the track, black talent in a performance driving sort of setting, and then that really sort of manifested into the Lexus 0 to 60. So it started as kind of a small sort of pilot of, hey, let's just record a celebrity at the track in a high-powered V8. Then let's look at what Lexus was already doing in terms of performance driving schools and letting people, inviting people out the track to test drive cars. And then say, okay, well, if we create a show around it, what would that essentially mean? So the other thing we saw was, did the black consumer typically think of Lexus as a quote-unquote performance brand? Next slide. So I'm gonna let Danielle kind of speak to this, because the Lexus commitment was really sort of all-encompassing. It wasn't just a particular department. If you look at what we leveraged.
Absolutely. So what we wanted to do was bring an experience to our consumers, because Lexus is about experiencing amazing. And so how we did that was partnering with our racing division, which many people don't even realize that Lexus is in racing. Our first race is actually this weekend, so we're very excited to be back on the track. Working with them and their drivers, we were able to partner this experience that we could bring to consumers as well as influencers and media partners, and then partnering with the driving connection to make sure that it's safe, but we're also implementing cool different things that you wouldn't really be able to do as just a novice driver.
Yeah, it was great. Next slide. I'll let you speak to your beloved lineup, Danielle.
Absolutely. So this is the heart and soul of Akio Toyota. As you, he poetically puts it, this is his candy shop, is the Lexus F line. So we have our RCF Track Edition, which is our almost fastest car in the lineup. And then we go into our sedan GSF, and then our new coupe LC500 and brand new convertible series.
Slide.
And these are our amazing drivers. So Scott Pruitt is actually in the Hall of Fame. He's been driving since he was 8. So he just celebrated 50 years of racing and put his hat up and then became one of our lead ambassadors. So he actually is there. He makes sure that the cars are really put to what they are capable of, but still getting that heart racing for the drivers. And then our lead was Jack Hawksworth, who was over the team as well. He's on our racing team and still in number 12 on our cars. And just make sure that that technique is really being seen on a minute level. So you don't think about how much pressure you put into the brakes, how much this car can corner and you don't feel that turn. He can put that into layman's terms for these drivers.
So the next slide. So one of the things that was very key as we go past the drivers into the tracks is, the Lexus Motorsports team was very keen on sort of dialing into the true sim racing and the fact that it had to look real, hence the Driving Connection Edition, having actual Lexus drivers, people that actually coach on the technical aspects of setup, and some of the other things that Danielle went into. But when you look at the tracks, Willow Springs was kind of our pilot season 1. We did 4 episodes. So that was really sort of the test animal for, okay, is this viable? Do we have an audience that essentially is going to watch this, consume this content? And then we went to some of the more infamous tracks, Road Atlanta, Raceway Laguna Seca. These are some of the storied tracks, not only in the U.S., but around the globe in terms of the attraction of U.S. as well as international racers. So we didn't spare any expense in terms of picking tracks that were very much the definitive of driver capability. Next slide. So when you move beyond the tracks, we start to think about, all right, well, who's going to show up and who's going to really set this on fire in terms of the opportunity. So we have our host Tigger in the top left, who hosted the last 2 seasons. But, if you look at a bit of the mix and this and everyone, we've had Tyson Becker before, we've had Mackay Pfeiffer, Lamont Rucker, Alfonso Ribeiro, John Sally for a couple of seasons. We've even had Nicole Lyons, who's a NASCAR race car driver, as well as culminated Jetter, who's a Olympic track runner. So we've had a mix of characters, if you would call it. And I think Danielle would probably agree that it's some of the most entertaining time we spent on set, and that was echoed by our drivers as well. But, you know, it's one of those things in terms of, you know, you get the right mix of talent to drive tune in, and then it increases sort of the viability of the program. Moving to the next slide. One of the things that's very key for us is really the support structure around it in terms of when we look at who's going to help, you know, create conversation around this. So if you see, and this has been an evolution as a logo slide between, you know, thinking about, okay, we've had Motor Trend, who's been very supportive on in particular the Super Street brand. We've looked at PSA Mag, Automotive Rhythms has been there since day one, Auto Proyecto on the Hispanic side, even looking at bringing a Girls Guide to Cars into the upcoming season. But we've been fortunate to have strong supporters of the agencies from editorial support that essentially would help sort of bring context, conversation, and exposure to the platform. Next slide. And then when you start to look about it, when you think about, you know, a racing show, 8 episodes, you do need an in-market framework to sort of bring this to life. And look, this is a bit of our skeleton outline of how we use all our partners, but between editorial support, who are, you know, what I call in the trade business of automotive, to having a partner that will host as a content hub, using partners on the paid social side, video distribution side, and even in the next upcoming season, looking at how we can bring podcasting into the platform, as well as getting women influencers to participate as well. So again, you know, this is sort of the high-level framework that we use to sort of bring success to the overall effort as we evolve. Next slide. And the other thing we want to show is, look, we got press pickup and we did get notoriety. Look, when you have the right talent as part of the racing series, then it's obviously more, it's sort of meaningful in terms of people reporting on it. Look, some of these members of the press were on site, so it's not just the cast and crew and production teams. We invite press out to get a firsthand look, because many of them haven't been to a racing track, but to allow us to see us sort of produce, and as well as get a behind the scenes perspective in terms of what it takes to produce something like this, what sort of goes into it, as well as getting sort of anecdote feedback as organic pickup during the show itself. Next slide. And we've also, obviously, you can imagine, looking at some of the talent we've used over the years, you know, most of them have been celebrity types, so obviously there's a strong social footprint, part of the draw of enlisting them to participate in this series, just because we know we're going to get conversation pick up from their audience. And look, these were great ambassadors who can drive consideration around the brand. You know, some of the people we've used have actually been and participated in actual black TV spots. Lance Gross is an influencer used just to cover 0 to 60, but we ended up featuring him in one of our SUV spots a year later. So, you know, what we've done is look at people that we can build longer standing relationships with as we develop this program. Next slide. So moving beyond that, obviously these are kind of, you know, looking at the winners. You know, John Sally won season 1 on the far right, and he came back for season 3, although he was not victorious in the finish round. And then Carmelita Jetta won in season 2, and then Curtis won in season 3. But look, we've been fortunate that the talent we've used have stayed with the program sort of through and through. So it's been great because they've always been eager to come back there, an opportunity to essentially be on the show. But it speaks to the staying power and their understanding of Lexus' commitment to the Black consumer. That we have enough fanfare that people say, hey, if I get to come back to the next season, absolutely let me know. Next slide. And then one thing we wanted to share is sort of the context of what people are saying. I mean, there's a lot more that came out of our social media monitoring than this, but you know, I think the great thing was a surprise and delight that, wow, Lexus was doing some of this with an all-black cast. I mean, that's not normal. I mean, there's a difference between brands that say they do multicultural and brands that are authentically committed to doing multicultural. And obviously, kudos to Danielle and her team who've been there since sort of day one and allowed us to create this sort of sandbox to play in beyond what we do from some of the more traditional advertising to come up with a racing series that at the end of the day is about what Lexus does well, and that's build and develop well-engineered vehicles for consumers. So thank you guys for kind of tuning into our quick sort of highlight video and some of the backdrop that Danielle and I gave, and I'll hand it over to the Media Post team if they wanted to field some questions from the audience.
Okay, well, I actually have a first question for you guys. when you talk about, I mean, Alba, we've talked about this program and what you've been able to reach, but also when you're going into something like this, because it started small, as you said, and you really evolved into it, but how can you, if anyone's interested in sort of reaching a certain audience, but maybe their budget is tight and they want to be able to reach that audience, but possibly even expand it out as it goes. Is there a way that you can sort of the thought process that goes into that as you're sort of starting something, that's, this is obviously a huge endeavor that you initially started, even though it started very organically.
Right. Well, I'll take the first pass at it and I'll let Danielle chime in. I mean, the first thing is you have to have a client who's willing to take the risk. And that's not everybody is sort of built that way. I think you have to have confidence in the equity you built with an audience that you can pull this off and they'll take you seriously. And hence why Lexus everything the sandbox from driving connection to the drivers to the motorsports support. I think the way we looked at it is, there are companies who spent more on a national TV spot than we spent all in production and promotion of this. In particular, from a production aspect, when you think about how much people invest in a Super Bowl spot for 60 seconds, we spent far less for 8 episodes, and in the earlier years it was 8 minutes. So you're talking about 64 minutes worth of content. So the other thing is the challenges of articulating things like performance aren't always as easy in shorter increments of advertising units. But when you think about how you can really dial into it, when you do a series and each episode is X amount of minutes long, and you have experts who can really educate the audience as well as the participants on the product and all their attributes, it's difficult to nail that in a 60-second spot. So the value proposition is there. I think the onus is on the setup to make sure it gets visibility. And I'll let Danielle, obviously from a client perspective, can offer her perspective on why this and not just do another TV commercial for our Black segment.
Absolutely. So to your original question of how we did this on such a small scale, it really was Walton Isaacson partnering with the right media outlets, being strategic about it, because we didn't have very much at the very beginning. And to Albert's point, we had so many episodes, they were long-winded, if you will, in digital formats of where people only have attention spans of 6 seconds and we're giving them 8 minutes. So how do we get people to really look at that long-form content and pull them in to look at the next episode and the next one and the next one? What we found was also partnering with the actual drivers on the racing side, but as well as on the influencer side. So they're filming on set before this ever goes out, and then they're filming and posting content as it's being released. So they're pushing their followers, which helps broaden that horizon. And what we have found over the years through all these learnings, we're actually finding this huge group of women enthusiasts that are into cars that are not being tapped into, because historically cars are a man's world. And so it's really giving us this new perspective as we go forward of not just being narrow-minded of this is our audience, this is what we need to grow, but really thinking outside of the box and how do we incorporate more females and how do we incorporate more media partners to get that message to the right content or to the right consumers.
Right. And Danielle, also in terms of you guys are known as this luxury brand, but really it introduced it to almost another audience in terms of performance. And sometimes sort of changing that audience, does that help you maybe redistinguish or broaden your brand in some ways?
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, most people had no idea that we're in performance, that we have these performance models because they are so niche, they are a low volume amount. So we're not going to put them on national advertising. So how do we get that message out? On top of, we have a racing team that we're putting tons of love and money and time into. How do we get that message out too? So this was the perfect partnership, to your point, to completely blow that out of the water. As every expectation of what Lexus is, we want to just put that into the past and show them what we are able and capable of and where we're going in the future.
Right. Well, we are tight on time now, unfortunately,